Our tale unfolds within the boisterous walls of the Hunter Guild Tavern, a haven for seasoned adventurers. Jin Yun, a grizzled veteran hunter known throughout the realm as Slayer, approached the bar with a confident stride and placed a hefty pouch of shimmering magic crystals upon the worn wooden surface. Shushu, the tavern's ever-attentive barkeep, greeted him with a familiar nod and a playful use of his renowned moniker. "Will Slayer be indulging in his customary order this evening?" she inquired. Her voice laced with a knowing smile. Jin simply offered a curt nod in response, then made his way to his usual table, confirming his intentions as he settled into the well-worn chair. "The usual," he stated plainly. A ripple of cheers and boisterous laughter erupted from the surrounding patrons, their conversations buzzing with excited discussions about the legendary figure, who had just emerged victorious from the depths of a perilous god-tier dungeon. Jin remained unfazed by the commotion, seemingly oblivious to the attention, as he continued with his routine. Meanwhile, at an adjacent table, a group of wide-eyed novice hunters engaged in hushed whispers, attempting to decipher the enigmatic scene unfolding before them. They were well aware that each vibrant purple magic crystal held an astronomical value, exceeding 1,000,000,000 coins, a sum that left them utterly speechless. However, the true meaning of the usual remained a perplexing mystery. It was a fresh-faced newcomer who finally dared to voice the question that lingered in the air. Clearly, the newbie was unfamiliar with the legend of Slayer, for he was unaware of the hero's remarkable generosity. Slayer always donated the entirety of his hard-earned magic crystals to enhance the guild's equipment and facilities, and to support the training of aspiring young hunters. This gentleman's contributions are immeasurable. Without him, the guild wouldn't be the esteemed organization it is today. To the hunters gathered here, he's practically a deity. Just then, the protagonist abruptly slaps Yashu, causing her to drop the bottle she was holding. Everyone is stunned. With a mischievous grin, Yen remarks, "That feisty spirit certainly doesn't resemble her grandmother." Shaw, her words hang in the air, a playful jab at the stark contrast. Shaw shoves him away forcefully, her indignation clear. "Are you mad?" she demands. "Does he have no regard for his life?" How Yan responds, pointing directly at Shaw. Shaw's grandmother had a far more terrifying temper. The hunters choke on their drinks, completely taken aback by this revelation. A young hunter, still wide-eyed, asks incredulously, "Are you all serious? This man is a god to you?" The man confirms, albeit hesitantly, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. The hunters exchange bewildered glances, their eyes settling on the protagonist. The young hunter speaks up. "This whole conversation about gods, it reminds me of something." He pauses for dramatic effect. "Remember the time when the Demon King and his 7 generals were banished back to their realm?" A mysterious figure emerged, accomplishing the impossible. The woman inquired, her voice laced with curiosity. Is he still engrossed in his comic book creations? What captivating tales does he weave within those pages? She wondered aloud. The young hunter responded with a knowing smile. His comic chronicles the exploits of an enigmatic silhouette, a figure shrouded in mystery, and compared to the narratives of our valiant fighter hunters. He continued, "This story possesses a far more compelling allure, captivating the imagination. Despite my efforts, I haven't been able to uncover any substantial information about this enigmatic being. Whispers and rumors abound, but all they reveal is that this shadowy figure made the ultimate sacrifice, laying down his life to vanquish the formidable Demon King. Legends say he was Earth's very first hunter, a youthful warrior with extraordinary prowess. Ultimately, the Demon King was banished, sealed away in a distant dimension, and shortly thereafter, immense gateways materialized across the globe, granting humanity access to a plethora of supernatural abilities, forever altering the course of history." The protagonist drained the last drop of his drink, placing the empty mug on the table with a gentle clink. He then carefully laid down the required payment, a few yen coins, beside the mug. Rising from his chair, he crossed his arms across his chest, a silent declaration that it was time for his departure. Shushua expressed his surprise. "But you've only just arrived." The protagonist gently placed his hand atop her head, a tender smile gracing his lips as he spoke. His only desire, he confessed, was to see her face once more. He offered his sincerest apologies, but she bristled with indignation, her words sharp and resentful. folding her arms defiantly beneath her chest. She declared that any apology now was far too late. Should he ever dare to touch her inappropriately again, she threatened to sever his hand without hesitation. With a playful grin and an affectionate tone, Yan chuckled softly. He reassured her, promising he would never repeat his offense. A vow he intended to keep. Perhaps, he mused, fate would allow their paths to intertwine once more in the future. Shushua's eyes widened in astonishment as she questioned the hidden meaning behind his words. What message, she wondered, was he trying to convey? Without a word, the protagonist turned and departed from the bustling tavern, leaving Shushua to ponder his enigmatic farewell. To him, the moniker, Slayer, was more than just a title. It was an emblem of perpetual torment, a constant reminder of the pain he had endured. Like a radiant beacon piercing the darkness of the night sky, it banished shadows and vanquished malevolence wherever it shone. Yet, this illuminating light was forged in the crucible of bloodshed and sacrifice. Fueled by the loss of innocent lives, it represented fear, mortality, utter devastation, and the ultimate demise of all things. Yan trudged through the desolate, debris-strewn streets, the silence broken only by the crackling of embers. He paused, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he lit a cigarette, the flame a tiny beacon in the encroaching darkness. He gazed up at the crimson moon, a malevolent eye staring down at the ravaged world. Its bloody hue painted the scene in a macabre light, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. He muttered, "For me, the end is drawing near." His voice was devoid of emotion. Flat and resigned, he was surrounded by a city in ruins, engulfed in a raging inferno that licked at the sky, painting it with hues of orange and black. Buildings crumbled like burnt toast, monuments to a fallen civilization. His mind drifted back to 60 years prior, to the year 2023 of the stellar calendar, a year that would forever be etched in the annals of history as the beginning of the end. The Demon King, a being of unimaginable power and cruelty, materialized alongside his 7 fearsome generals, each a harbinger of destruction. They ripped through the very fabric of spacetime, creating a gaping wound in reality. Their purpose? The utter annihilation of the human race. A brutal invasion of unprecedented scale. Panic seized the world. Mass hysteria erupted as people desperately sought escape. Frenzied screams pierced the air as humanity scrambled for survival, fleeing the encroaching darkness. Desperate cries for help echoed amidst the crumbling cityscape, drowned out by the roar of the inferno and the monstrous shrieks of the invaders. The monstrous horde showed no mercy, slaughtering anyone who dared cross their path, leaving a trail of carnage in their wake. In the midst of the chaos, Yan clung to Yang, her lifeblood staining his hands as she lay dying in his arms. Tears streamed down his face as he choked out a desperate plea. We need someone to save us." Overcome with grief and despair, he cried out her name. Ying. The sound was raw with anguish. With a weak smile, she placed a trembling hand on his chest, her voice a mere whisper. "How, Yan? This can't be the end for you. You have to escape." With her dying breath, she mustered a final, desperate scream, pleading for his survival, begging for him to be saved from the encroaching darkness. Overcome with grief, the protagonist cried out in anguish, his voice echoing through the desolate landscape. He mourned the loss of his cherished friend, the silence punctuated only by his heartbroken sobs. Moments passed, each one heavy with sorrow. Hoyan stood resolutely before the shimmering spatial gate, the entrance to the formidable god-level dungeon. He extinguished his cigarette on the ground, a small gesture signifying the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The protagonist declared with unwavering determination that this would be his final descent into a god-level dungeon. The legendary return stone, the key to his ultimate goal, had to be within these treacherous depths. Time stretched on as he ventured deeper into the heart of the god-level dungeon. A monstrous being, engulfed in blazing flames, roared its defiance. Incredulous, the fiery behemoth confessed its astonishment that a mere human had managed to penetrate so far into its domain. Overwhelmed by the protagonist's power, the monster reluctantly conceded defeat. Unleashing his formidable abilities, the protagonist struck with blinding speed. With a single, devastating blow, he obliterated half of the monster's colossal form. The fire demon, reeling in disbelief, questioned the impossible. How could such power exist? It demanded to know how Yan, this seemingly insignificant human, could have vanquished it with such ease. The protagonist offered a curt apology, his tone devoid of sympathy. He was pressed for time. He explained impatiently, and had no patience for the creature's pitiful lamentations. He finished off the monster with ruthless efficiency, then reached into its smoldering remains and extracted a gleaming sphere. Hajian, his voice filled with anticipation, inquired, "Is this the return stone?" Lost in the abyss of his own despair, the protagonist wrestled with agonizing thoughts. The crushing weight of loss bore down on him, convincing him that everyone he cherished was already gone. If all were lost, what purpose remained in his relentless struggle? What was the point of fighting? Everything that held meaning, his family, the foundation of his life, his loyal friends, the comrades who fought beside him, all had perished, leaving him utterly alone in a desolate world. If they were truly gone, what reason did he have to continue this arduous fight? Why endure this endless torment? What was the purpose of it all? Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoed through the emptiness, offering a glimmer of hope. It whispered that redemption was not beyond his grasp, that all was not lost. There was still a chance to mend the shattered fragments of his past. The voice instructed him to seek the legendary returning stone, an artifact of immense power. This mythical stone lay hidden within the treacherous depths of one of the god-level dungeons. Realms of unimaginable danger, the returning stone held the key to rewriting his history, granting him the power to journey back to the past. Fueled by this newfound hope, he knew he had to press onward, to continue his fight. But a question gnawed at him. Whose voice had spoken from the void? Who offered this lifeline in his darkest hour? Yan wondered, who was this enigmatic being who communicated with him from the shadows? For 50 long years, he had dedicated his life to the pursuit of this artifact. Driven by the overwhelming fear of losing everything, haunted by the specter of loss, he had relentlessly pursued his goal. Unwavering in his determination for 5 decades, with renewed purpose, the protagonist opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on obtaining the returning stone. He reached out, his fingers grasping for the hope it represented, that if the mysterious voice was indeed truthful, then he was desperately pleading to be sent back 60 years into the past. Sometime later, inside the protagonist's room, Xiaoyan abruptly opened his eyes, his gaze darting around in astonishment. He wondered if he had truly been granted his wish. If he had actually returned. Could this be real? Was it not just a dream? Instantly, he reached for his phone and dialed Xiao Jing's number. His heart pounded with anticipation as he waited for her to answer. He yearned to hear her voice. Xiao Jing answered, sleepily asking his name. Is something wrong? It's only 5 in the morning. She mumbled. Why aren't you sleeping? Xiaoyan thought, a surge of hope rising within him. She's still alive. She's actually alive. The realization washed over him, confirming his deepest desire. She was alive. Tears welled up in his eyes as he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. He confessed his overwhelming joy at just hearing her voice again. Confused, Xiao Jing asked, should you tell me what's wrong? Has something happened? Is something truly the matter? She pressed, concern lacing her voice. Overcome with emotion, Xiaoyan could only repeat her name, over and over. Perplexed, Xiao Jing questioned him. Why do you keep saying my name like that? She inquired. Are you unwell? Why does your voice sound so strange? She was growing increasingly worried. If he's truly unwell, she wondered aloud, why doesn't he just take his medicine? A suspicion began to form in her mind. Could he be feigning illness? She pondered the possibility. Is this just a clever ruse to avoid unfinished homework? A generous offer slipped from her lips. If that's the case, I could go over and let him copy mine. Meanwhile, Yan retrieved a peculiar object and activated its latent power, triggering a transformation that restored his youth. A sharp, irritated cry pierced the air. Is he still there? The question hung heavy with impatience. Is he still lingering? Tears welled in the protagonist's eyes as he croaked. I'm all right. I'm fine. He explained, his raspy voice. I just woke up. That's why my voice is so hoarse. He uttered her name once more, a familiar sound on his lips. Her voice rose in exasperation. Why does he keep saying my name? What does he want? Impatience laced her words. Just tell me what he needs. Yan confessed with heartfelt emotion. I've missed you terribly. The protagonist reflected on the passage of time, realizing that for 6 long decades, not a single day had gone by without the memory of her haunting his thoughts. He mourned for all that he had lost, for every precious soul that had vanished. Xiaoying voiced her concern. He's acting incredibly strange. Her confusion was evident. After all, we just saw each other yesterday. A blush crept onto her cheeks as she spoke, her words trailing off. She hinted that if he had nothing further to add, she'd retire for the night, explaining that yesterday had been particularly demanding. A playful smile graced Xiaoyan's lips as she urged him to wait, a hint of mischief in her voice. He responded with a mixture of astonishment and bewilderment, completely baffled by her cryptic request. He had no idea what she was referring to. He declared his intention to join her shortly, his voice filled with an eager anticipation. Xiaoying questioned his sudden urge to visit at such a late hour, her tone laced with confusion. She explained that her neighbor had already retired for the night, and she was reluctant to disturb her slumber. As he made his way towards her, Xiaoyan reassured her, promising that he wouldn't rouse her neighbor from sleep. He simply insisted that she wait for his arrival. Xiaoying attempted to dissuade him, but her efforts proved futile. As he sprinted down the street, a wave of recognition washed over him. He knew this path, this familiar road would lead him directly to her doorstep. Fueled by exhilaration, he continued his journey, leaping and bounding with joy. He knew exactly where he was going. A surge of elation coursed through him as he realized that every detail remained vivid in his memory. He remembered everything: the precise number of lanterns, the vibrant hues of the houses, even the gentle caress of the wind against his skin. After what felt like an eternity, he was finally home. Moments later, he arrived at her house. Instead of a face-to-face conversation, Yan used his phone to call her, addressing her by name, informing her that he was waiting downstairs. This unusual approach piqued her curiosity. Startled, she rushed to the window, peering out as she exclaimed in disbelief, "Has he completely lost his mind? What could he possibly be thinking?" Below, the protagonist stood with a playful grin, raising his hand in a beckoning gesture, silently urging her to come down and join him. He wanted to share a special moment, a chance to gaze at the stars together. Moments later, Xiaoying descended the stairs, her face flushed with a mixture of annoyance and confusion. "Yan," she demanded, "what in the world are you doing?" Without a word, the protagonist pulled her into a warm embrace. He whispered her name, Xiaoying. She opened her mouth to protest, to question his actions, but he only held her tighter, silencing her in spoken words. A blush crept up her cheeks. "Yan," she gasped, "you're going to suffocate me. Let go." She playfully scolded him, worried he might actually crush her ribs. He chuckled, his voice muffled against her hair. "If I had to call you down here," he murmured, "I deserve to hold you for a little while longer." Xiaoying's anger melted away. She returned his embrace, a soft smile gracing her lips. "All right," she conceded, "I suppose I can allow this." The protagonist lifted his head, gazing intently into her eyes. His intense stare made her feel self-conscious. "What?" Xiaoying asked nervously. "Is there something on my face?" Hao Yan observed her intently, a thoughtful expression clouding his features as he questioned, "Is this truly her? Is this her genuine personality?" A nagging feeling of unease settled over him. Something about her demeanor felt amiss. He suspected something was wrong. She erupted in a burst of indignant outrage, her voice sharp as she demanded, "Hey, where are you looking?" She defensively shielded her chest with her hands, her voice laced with indignation as she called out his name. "Just now." "Where exactly were your eyes focused?" she pressed, her tone accusatory. With a sudden, forceful movement, the male lead, Li, seized her hand and yanked her towards him. The unexpected action caught her completely off guard, leaving her utterly astonished. A crimson blush flooded Xiaoying's cheeks as she struggled against his hold. Attempting to break free, Hao Yan fixed her with a serious gaze, addressing her by name with a firm tone. "Xiaoying," he stated, "there's no need for you to consider breast augmentation." He added with sincerity, "In my eyes, you are already absolutely perfect." Confused, Xiaoying questioned him, "Why are you even bringing up breast enlargement?" The male lead's eyes burned with a predatory hunger as he leaned in, poised to pounce. Xiaoying confessed, her voice barely a whisper, I wanted to tell you that I admire your physique." Hao Yan's hands boldly explored her body, eliciting a mortified gasp from Xiaoying. He remarked with a hint of surprise, "You barely seem to have any implants." A puzzled frown creased his brow. Things weren't quite as he remembered them. Something felt different. Xiaoying's patience snapped. Infuriated, she exclaimed his name and delivered a sharp blow to his head. I don't need your hands anymore, she scolded angrily, gripping his head in disbelief. The male lead muttered, convincing himself that this must all be a bizarre, vivid dream. The woman before him possessed a drastically different demeanor than the one he knew, whose gentle sweetness had captivated his heart. This abrasive, hostile woman, showering him with disdain, couldn't possibly be the same person. Her eyes, filled with venomous hatred, pierced through him. Just a dream? That's preposterous. This can't be real, he thought, desperately clinging to denial. He felt utterly bewildered, his mind reeling from the shocking disparity. Extending a hand towards him, she inquired gently, "Why are you just sitting there? What are you waiting for? Let's go stargazing," she suggested, a hint of warmth gracing her voice. Moments later, beneath the velvety night sky in the park, Xiaoying confessed, with a touch of pride, that she had managed to slip away unnoticed, granting them a precious interlude to be alone together. A blush crept across her cheeks as she shyly glanced at him. Leaning closer, Yan softly declared, "I've truly missed you." Xiaoying stammered awkwardly, "But we just met." "Of course, it was," the protagonist began, his voice trailing off mysteriously. He averted his gaze, a serious expression clouding his face as he whispered something inaudible to himself. That he would undoubtedly rescue everyone within 3 days. A bold promise. Indeed, sometime later, within the depths of a wild, untamed forest on the city's outskirts, Yun's words echoed in his mind. Just 48 hours remained before the Demon King would unleash his terrifying invasion upon Earth. Perhaps, he mused, his powers hadn't diminished as much as he'd feared during his tumultuous journey through time. Closing his eyes in deep concentration, the protagonist awakened his dormant abilities. A blinding bolt of golden lightning descended from the heavens, striking him with immense power. Transformed into an elderly sage, he ascended gracefully, hovering above the earth, with hands clasped across his chest. Yan declared with unwavering confidence that this awe-inspiring display was but a mere 1% of his true potential. "Magnificent," he muttered. It seemed that, despite everything, his overwhelming strength remained unchanged. With a simple snap of his fingers, the surrounding devastation miraculously began to mend itself, gently landing back on solid ground. The protagonist posed a chilling question. "So," he began, his voice resonating with authority, "this creature fancies itself the Demon King. Does it?" This time, he would force this monstrous being to devour the very earth and plead for his mercy. Later, back at school, the protagonist settled into his desk, only to be greeted by Exion's cheerful inquiry. "Why didn't you come to my show?" she asked, her voice brimming with playful curiosity. Had they truly had a falling out, as he and she had implied? He squeezed his eyes shut, wishing it wasn't real, desperately trying to deny the reality unfolding before him. The enigma of a woman's mind. It's a puzzle no man can truly solve, he mused, a hint of frustration in his voice. Flexion, with a mischievous grin, declared himself a true expert in deciphering the complexities of the female heart. A seasoned connoisseur of their emotions. My, someone's feeling rather mature," she remarked, a playful lilt in her tone. "Did anyone happen to note the time of the incident?" the officer inquired. "It was yesterday," a witness responded. "Sometime in the late evening." Her neighbor recounted seeing her dash out into the street. Another voice chimed in, adding to the narrative. "In the dead of night." The first witness finished, a touch of drama in their voice. "You needn't respond, but honestly, his behavior is reminiscent of a grumpy old man," she whispered, a touch of amusement in her tone. "He completely ignored me, didn't even offer a simple greeting," he complained, feeling slighted. "Such blatant disrespect. Utterly impolite," she agreed, shaking her head in disapproval. The protagonist reflected on his youthful appearance, realizing he now looked like a typical adolescent. This transformation still felt foreign, unfamiliar territory he hadn't yet fully navigated. "You should try to embrace this new you. Project a more vibrant and energetic demeanor," she advised. Yan offered a reassuring smile and said, "Patience is key. Embrace the journey, one step at a time. There's no need to rush. Eventually, everything will fall into place," she added, her voice filled with gentle wisdom. He pondered, is this how teenagers are supposed to behave? This carefree and optimistic attitude. Xian fixed him with a perplexed stare. You're acting rather strangely today, she observed, a hint of concern in her voice. He wore a look of exhaustion, but remained silent, not uttering a single word. Fear gnawed at him. He couldn't bear to imagine the ordeal his friend had endured. The protagonist observed, his anxiety evident in his nervous gaze. Did you perhaps overreact? Xian inquired with a gentle smile. Attempting to lighten the mood, he playfully embraced the protagonist, chuckling as he urged him to confess the truth. You're already in this state because you bottled everything up, haven't you? Xian teased. If only he understood what I was truly talking about. Xian mused internally. Of course, the protagonist thought, acknowledging Xian's unspoken sentiment. He reminisced about their younger days. Weren't we all a bit naive back then? Is this what youth truly is? He pondered. He let out an awkward laugh, trying to dispel the tension. It wasn't like that at all. We were just chatting, he explained. But before he could elaborate, Yan interjected, picking up a pencil as if to illustrate a point. Our relationship is purely platonic. Yan asserted firmly. Let's stop with the jokes. He emphasized the need for seriousness. We should focus on our studies. Class is about to begin, it's time to concentrate. He reminded them. The protagonist had a feeling that someday, Xian would express gratitude for this well-timed advice. Xian announced with a bright smile. The day after tomorrow, our school is organizing an overnight field trip, and there would even be luxurious accommodations available. A hotel amidst the wilderness. He understood exactly what Xian was suggesting, the underlying meaning clear in his words. Xian spoke with such conviction and familiarity, painting a vivid picture of the destination, that it was evident he knew precisely what he was talking about. Xian emphasized the gravity of the situation, stating that missing out on such an extraordinary opportunity would lead to a lifetime of regret, a decision that would haunt him forever. A chilling realization washed over the protagonist, a horrifying memory from his past life surfacing. This very excursion had ended tragically for Xian, a devastating outcome he desperately wanted to avoid. Lost in the depths of his disturbing recollections, Xian's expression turned somber. The memories flooded back, vivid and agonizing. How they had been ambushed by ferocious monsters during this very trip. A terrifying encounter that left him scarred. He was powerless to save Xian from the monstrous creature. A failure that haunted him relentlessly. Xiaoying's desperate cries echoed in his mind, urging him to flee, to prioritize their own survival. They had to escape the relentless onslaught of the monstrous horde if they wanted to live. The protagonist, helpless and filled with dread, witnessed the horrific scene unfold before his very eyes. His friend being devoured by the monstrous beast. How Yun's thoughts raced as he snapped back to reality. His eyes filled with determination. He couldn't reveal the impending danger, the horrors that awaited them the day after tomorrow. They would likely dismiss his warnings as mere fantasy or succumb to paralyzing fear, which would only exacerbate the situation, leading to further chaos and jeopardizing their survival. Feigning casual camaraderie, Xian inquired, shouldn't they be concentrating on their academic pursuits? Had he perhaps misheard something amidst the classroom chatter? Yan shot his friend a bewildered glance. A look of pure astonishment painted across his face. He inquired, his voice laced with curiosity. Why are you staring at me like that? Did I say something strange? A chuckle escaped Xian's lips as he replied, I was just absorbing the wisdom of this textbook, upside down. Apparently, I've mastered the art of inverted reading. A crimson blush crept up the protagonist's cheeks, a wave of embarrassment washing over him. Oh, he mumbled sheepishly. I really do need to buckle down and hit the books. I have something rather important happening next week, he explained, a hint of seriousness in his tone. But after that, we should definitely celebrate. How about we go somewhere together? Just then, Xiaoying entered the classroom, her presence immediately felt. Xian greeted her with a playful grin, remarking, she walked right in and didn't even spare me a glance. Have I become invisible? Xiaoying marched directly towards the protagonist, her eyes fixed on him. You're a pervert, she accused, her voice filled with indignation. Mortified, Yan stammered, I got carried away yesterday. I apologize. I lost control, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. After a moment of stunned silence, Xiaoying spoke, thrusting a small box into his hands with a disapproving frown. Your parents called, she said curtly. They want to talk to you. and informed him they wouldn't return until Tuesday. Concerned he'd resort to a diet of only instant noodles. They specifically requested she deliver him proper meals at school. He shouldn't overthink her actions, there were no ulterior motives. Her sole intention was to alleviate his parents' worries. This gesture wasn't about him personally. It was entirely for their peace of mind. Accepting the lunchbox, the protagonist offered a grateful smile. He expressed his understanding and sincere appreciation for her kindness. With a playful clap and a grin, Zian quipped, if anyone were lucky enough to marry this goofball. Gesturing to the protagonist, they'd undoubtedly become an exceptional wife and a truly loving mother. Flustered, Xiaoying questioned why she would ever marry him. Strolling back to her desk, she reminded him, class is starting soon, so let's focus and behave. Xian chuckled, seems like I've truly embarrassed you. Unfortunately, that's beyond my control. He added playfully, now, stop ogling my breakfast, you'll get tired of seeing it once we're married. He teased. Hao Yan retorted with mock jealousy. Oh, so you're already planning that far ahead? Should just voice his desires. And he, as a true companion, would assist him in finding a compatible partner. Someone worthy of his affection. Xian confessed that such happiness wasn't something he desired. He had no need for romantic entanglements. He reveled in his singlehood, enjoying the unburdened freedom it afforded him. Commitment wasn't something he sought. The shrill sound of the school bell pierced the air, signaling the end of class. The teacher announced that this particular topic had been omitted from the examination for the past 3 years. Therefore, its inclusion in the upcoming exam was a certainty. Diligent preparation was paramount, she emphasized, urging them to study thoroughly. Hao Yan's gaze drifted towards the window. Lost in thought, a persistent feeling lingered, a sense of unreality. As if he were trapped within a vivid dream. Could it be true? Had he truly endured 6 decades in solitude? Suddenly, a deafening explosion ripped through the air, shattering the peace and emanating from somewhere beyond the window pane. The protagonist's eyes snapped towards the window. His expression etched with astonishment. A cacophony of panicked whispers erupted within the classroom as students speculated about the source of the commotion. Did you hear that? They questioned each other, their voices laced with fear. Where did that sound come from? Something must have exploded, the teacher exclaimed, her voice trembling with anxiety. Reports began to circulate, pinpointing the origin of the blast. It's coming from the eastern part of the city, someone announced. The eastern part of the city, others echoed, their voices hushed with disbelief. Unable to contain his unease, the protagonist abruptly rose from his chair. How could this happen? He murmured, his brow furrowed in concern, and declared that the ominous event had already commenced. However, he cautioned that the time for direct confrontation had not yet arrived. Yan's serious demeanor and grave tone emphasized the urgency of the situation. Observing his companions, Yan realized he might be overreacting, causing undue alarm among his friends. Nevertheless, he felt compelled to investigate the matter personally. Driven by an unshakable sense of duty, Xiaoying noticed the protagonist abruptly bolting from the classroom. A sense of urgency in his movements, Hao Yan swiftly ascended to the school's rooftop. Seeking a vantage point, he underwent a remarkable transformation. Reverting to his elderly form, he remarked that in this guise, he would remain completely unrecognizable. Ensuring his anonymity, the protagonist traversed the urban landscape with remarkable speed and agility. He leapt across buildings, navigating the cityscape with practiced ease. Finally, he landed near the epicenter of the commotion, the source of the unsettling noise. He posed a crucial question, seeking an explanation for the unfolding chaos. Gazing at the imposing gate from which monstrous creatures were emerging, he demanded answers. He questioned why this catastrophic event had transpired prematurely, disrupting the established timeline. A cry of disbelief escaped his lips as he witnessed the horrifying scene of monsters wreaking havoc upon the city. He expressed his astonishment, struggling to comprehend the unfolding devastation. How is this possible? He exclaimed. The monstrous entities engaged in a relentless rampage, mercilessly slaughtering innocent civilians and obliterating everything in their path. They subjected the vulnerable population to cruel mockery. Reveling in their helplessness and despair, a crimson-colored monster unleashed a torrent of fire from its gaping maw, further intensifying the inferno consuming the city, engulfing innocent people in flames while their desperate cries for help echoed through the air. The protagonist realized with a chilling certainty that the invasion had already begun. He hadn't anticipated the enemy's premature arrival, their assault commencing sooner than predicted. However, he was no longer the vulnerable Haoyan of 60 years past, the helpless individual he once was. Rage surged within him as he declared that in this moment, his sole purpose, his very reason for existence, was the annihilation of the Demon King and his malevolent forces. Emerging from the gate, the Demon King proclaimed with a hint of surprise, "Imagine, in this vast world, someone actually knows my true name. A secret I guarded so closely." He demanded to know the identity of this individual. "Who are you?" Haoyan's furious roar reverberated, filled with righteous anger. His eyes blazed with fury as he proclaimed himself to be the Demon King's ultimate downfall, the harbinger of his destruction. "I am your doom." Unleashing his power, the Demon King scoffed. "Such arrogance. Your threats are meaningless." A beam of dark energy erupted from him, but to the Demon King's astonishment, the protagonist remained unscathed. Defying his attack, Haoyan retaliated with a mighty blow, demanding, "Why have you come to this world? What is the purpose of your invasion? Return to the abyss from whence you came," he commanded. The Demon King, defeated but defiant, retreated back to the safety of his own dimension. But our protagonist, unwavering in his resolve, stood as the final barrier between worlds. Observing the faint trickle of blood from the protagonist's wounds, the Demon King pondered aloud. Is he truly injured? With a surge of power emanating from his body, Yan declared, "If he bleeds, then he shall be forever consumed by the abyss of darkness." Colossal hands, formed from pure energy, materialized and began to inexorably seal the spatial gateway, unleashing his own formidable power in response. The protagonist countered the Demon King's efforts with a furious roar that echoed across dimensions. The protagonist pushed back against the closing gate, leaving the Demon King stunned. Can he possibly seal the gate with his bare hands? He wondered incredulously. The Demon King struggled to comprehend the protagonist's sheer strength. Is this some elaborate deception? He questioned, his voice laced with doubt. It has to close. The protagonist gritted his teeth, mustering every ounce of his remaining strength. It must, straining with all his might. The protagonist pushed back against the immense pressure, determined to seal the gate. The moment of truth had arrived. The fate of both worlds hung in the balance. A sinister chuckle escaped the Demon King's lips, a cruel smile spreading across his face as he watched the protagonist struggle. His gaze fixed on the protagonist, the Demon King observed with a mixture of amusement and anticipation. With a final, Herculean effort, Haoyan forced the spatial gate shut, utilizing the very last of his power. He actually did it. The Demon King stammered in disbelief, witnessing the impossible. Turning his attention to the ravaged city, the protagonist surveyed the remaining monstrous invaders. The city was still under siege, with the remaining monsters continuing their relentless rampage of destruction and slaughter. With a swift and decisive blow, Haoyan crushed the skull of a nearby monster, ending its reign of terror. Unbeknownst to him, a hidden observer was secretly documenting his heroic actions. After a long and arduous battle, the protagonist breathed a sigh of relief, muttering to himself, "It's finally over." His father's voice crackled through the phone, a comforting sound after the chaos. He announced that he and his wife would be returning home the following day, reminding their son to take care of himself in their absence. "And don't forget to lock all the doors and windows before you go to bed," his father added, a familiar parental refrain. A smile brightened Haoyan's face as he reassured his father. "I understand everything, Dad. I won't forget your instructions," he promised sincerely. Lying on the sofa with his eyes closed, Haoyan reflected on recent events. He realized that the Demon King's attack had commenced sooner than anticipated, catching him off guard. However, he had successfully managed to thwart the invasion, preventing any significant damage. Despite the initial panic and his parents' worried cries, everyone had emerged from the ordeal safely. Now, with a sense of peace washing over him, Haoyan could finally relish the simple fact of being 15 years old. A grin spread across his face as he recalled. Because of yesterday's incident, the school declared a 3-day holiday for all students. The timing couldn't have been better, he mused. It provided a much-needed opportunity to gather his thoughts. He reached for something, holding it carefully in his hands as he spoke. It was a return stone, a mystical object that possessed unique properties. It didn't diminish his abilities. Nor did it impose any limitations on his powers. However, as he underwent the transformation back to his younger form, his powers had vanished. How could this be? Yan inquired with a cheerful tone. So, you're telling me you were the only person on Earth with superpowers? A blush crept across the protagonist's face. He stammered. Suddenly, so many inappropriate thoughts are flooding my mind. Gazing at his inventory through the system window, he muttered, I never imagined I'd accumulate so many items. In that final divine dungeon, he sighed. But now, it's all worthless. And to think, I still had so many coins left. He lamented the lost currency. Yan mused, perhaps you should keep it as a memento. The sudden chime of the doorbell interrupted their conversation. Moving towards the door, he announced, I'll get that. Xian's voice boomed as he strode in with a grin. Dude, you have to get online right now. Yan questioned, bewildered. What's going on? Xian exclaimed incredulously. Haven't you checked the news? His voice brimming with excitement. He declared, the internet is practically exploding. This news is massive. This is absolutely unbelievable. Xian exclaimed, jabbing his index finger at the monitor. Look, this old man is incredible. He's absolutely amazing. He continued, his voice filled with awe. And this scene, he added, pointing again, this moment in the video. It's like something out of a dream. A fantasy come to life. Yan, perplexed, questioned, what on earth are you talking about? What dream? The protagonist stared at the video, utterly dumbfounded, his eyes wide with shock. The footage showed him, in the guise of an elderly man, vanquishing the final monstrous foe he had just moments ago, while disguised as a senior citizen, eliminated the last of the creatures. Yan, mortified, covered his face with his hand, attempting to hide his embarrassment. He thought to himself, this entire incident, it was all caught on camera. Xian declared dramatically, aliens, they decided to launch an invasion of Earth, but this old man, he emphasized, single-handedly repelled them. He sent them packing, he said excitedly, with a triumphant grin. Now the entire internet is searching for him. He's a global sensation. If I hadn't witnessed it myself, Xian confessed, shaking his head in disbelief, I would have sworn it was a scene straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. He concluded with a sense of wonder. It's real. Superpowers actually exist. Yan, averting his gaze and forcing a nervous laugh, responded awkwardly. So, there were aliens? You mean, actual extraterrestrials? He stammered, still trying to process the information. Strangely, he admitted, I didn't see any aliens. I didn't notice them at all. I just assumed a gas pipeline exploded nearby. He finished lamely. That seemed more plausible. Xian exclaimed, his hands instinctively reaching out to grasp the object. Doesn't he comprehend the gravity of this situation? Xian questioned, incredulous. He gestured emphatically towards the sky, his index finger pointing straight up. He believes there must be others out there. Xian explained, individuals endowed with extraordinary abilities. He thinks it's possible that even the two of us could possess such powers. Xian fixed him with a look of utter disappointment. After all, Xian had always harbored a deep fascination with the supernatural. He was captivated by extraordinary phenomena. So his current composure seemed utterly baffling. Why wasn't he more excited? Howian interjected, clarifying that Xian had completely misconstrued his reaction. He confessed to being utterly stunned, still struggling to process the astonishing revelation. His mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragmented information. Xian inquired, curious, if you could choose, what kind of superpowers would you desire? Howian admitted that the thought had never crossed his mind. Such a notion seemed utterly preposterous. A mere fantasy. With a playful smirk, Xian pressed further. Why do you dismiss it as impossible? You witnessed the elderly gentleman's abilities firsthand. Xian reminded him. He served as living proof that superpowers are not merely a figment of imagination. And now, Xian declared with newfound conviction, I am certain those extraterrestrial beings could return. The protagonist retorted irritably, his voice laced with annoyance. Wipe that silly grin off your face and snap out of your ridiculous daydreams, he snapped. Flushing with embarrassment, Xian sheepishly confessed, well, I've already decided what power I'd want. His ultimate desire was to unlock the secret of manipulating time, to bring it to a standstill. Out of the blue, Yan dropped a bombshell. Claiming to have possessed this knowledge all along, Xian placed a reassuring hand on the protagonist's shoulder, offering guidance and support, saying that if he dedicated himself, he possessed such immense power. He was certain he could make his friend's dreams a reality. Showering him with success, he would go to any lengths for his companion. He would face any danger. Never retreating, never surrendering. The protagonist insisted it wasn't necessary. There was no need for such drastic measures. He preferred a gradual approach, a steady climb towards their goals. He believed in allowing events to unfold organically, naturally. Xian boisterously declared, jabbing a thumb at his own chest, that he would personally witness everything on their upcoming adventure. Next Friday, he would see it all. Yen shuddered, horrified by the potential dangers of the excursion. His mind raced with terrifying possibilities. However, his worries were now moot. The trip was no longer happening. It was all cancelled. Finished. Over. The protagonist playfully smacked Xian on the chest. A friendly gesture with an underlying warning. He sternly cautioned Xian against even considering such reckless actions. He didn't want Xiaoying to retaliate violently, potentially beating him to a pulp. Xian simply chuckled in response. Later, after spending some time in the mountains, the teacher announced that everyone needed to complete registration and settle into their assigned accommodations. The remainder of the day was theirs to enjoy. Free time for all. We'll meet tomorrow morning at 8:30 sharp, the instructor announced. Gather in the hotel lobby for our group session. Does everyone understand the plan? He inquired. Looking around, a chorus of yes erupted from the students. Confirming their understanding, they excitedly chattered amongst themselves as they disembarked from the bus. Xian confided in his friend. Xiaoying and I haven't had a proper conversation all day. She seems genuinely upset with me. He added, a hint of worry in his voice. It's like I've offended her somehow. He pondered aloud. But I haven't done anything wrong, have I? Otherwise, why would she be angry with me for so long? He questioned. Perplexed, Hao Yan retorted with an exasperated sigh. Honestly, Xian, your mind is constantly filled with nothing but silly, perverted thoughts. Try to leave some space in there for something intelligent for once. He advised sarcastically. Xian playfully responded, sprawling comfortably on the bed. Relax, Hao Yan. There's no room left in my head. It's already fully occupied. Hao Yan sat up abruptly, pointing a finger at Xian. Don't play coy with me, he accused. I know you too well. You're definitely hiding something. He pressed further. Come on, spill it. There's no need to be embarrassed. Compared to me, Hao Yan boasted. You're still an amateur in these matters. Hao Yan's words left Xian stunned, his eyes widening in disbelief. He thought to himself, bewildered, what on earth could he possibly be talking about? Could he have truly been that deceptive? Back in his younger days, he was convinced his actions would infuriate Shushua, leading her to demand an explanation for his behavior. Xian's advice was simple: embrace the joys of youth while they still had the chance. Once the responsibilities of work began to weigh upon them, their carefree spirit and youthful exuberance would gradually fade away. Exhaustion from daily work would leave them with little energy for anything else. The protagonist inquired with a gentle smile. What troubles you so deeply? Reaching adulthood is a triumph in itself. Lost in his own thoughts, Yan mechanically filled the kettle with water, his mind preoccupied as he placed it on the stove to boil. Moments later, the kettle began to sing its gentle tune. The protagonist, cradling a warm cup of tea, suggested inviting Xiaoying on a camping adventure. Xian declared he had something important to share. What is it? Yan inquired, his curiosity piqued. Lately, Xian confessed, I've been feeling rather old. Frankly speaking, he exudes the same formidable presence as that elderly gentleman who single-handedly repelled the extraterrestrial invaders. Yan observed him with a mixture of astonishment and curiosity. Flexion remarked that it wasn't merely his manner of speaking, but his entire aura and bearing. Something significant must have transpired between him and Xiaoying on that fateful night. Could there have been a rift in their seemingly perfect camaraderie? He interjected with an air of knowing superiority, claiming to possess the answer. It must have been his younger companion who faltered and failed in his assigned mission. Wasn't it? That would certainly elucidate his current melancholic disposition. He responded with a carefully crafted smile, explaining that he was merely acclimating to the demands of rising early. This allowed him to devote his full attention and concentration to his academic pursuits. After all, He had diligently prioritized his well-being since childhood, rendering this rigorous schedule entirely commonplace for him. Such discipline was undoubtedly beyond the capacity of the average individual. He invariably maintained an impeccable posture, standing tall and proud at his designated station. Xian stated, retrieving items from his luggage, that he should exercise patience and wait for a moment. He replied with a reassuring smile, triumphantly holding aloft a small jar, proclaiming his successful search. With a smug grin plastered across his face, Xian declared, presenting the jar to Yan with a flourish. You should incorporate some of this ginseng into your daily regimen, he advised. Goji berries alone simply won't suffice for a man of your unique constitution. Yan's eyebrows shot up in surprise. How? He began, bewildered. Why would you happen to have this with you? Just then, without warning, a sharp knock echoed on the door. Xiaoying's voice called out, are you two ready yet? We're going to be late. Xian swung the door open for her, a playful smirk dancing on his lips. Tell me about it, he chuckled. I've been practically bouncing off the walls with anticipation. Xiaoying, her voice laced with mock outrage, demanded to know, what were you two whispering about in here? Don't tell me you were planning on sneaking off on a hike without me, she accused. Xian offered a disarming smile, dismissing her concerns with a wave of his hand. Great minds think alike, he quipped. Honestly, you two act like an old married couple sometimes. Xiaoying's mock anger flared. What was that? She shrieked. Do you have a death wish? Xian, momentarily flustered, stammered. It was just a figure of speech, he added awkwardly, under his breath, although, perhaps not entirely inaccurate. Given enough time, Xiaoying, her voice laced with anger, snapped. He had better keep his mouth shut, a playful smile dancing on his lips. Yan inquired, oh, and how do you propose he accomplish that? Xiaoying's brow furrowed in concern. Where exactly are they planning to go? She wondered aloud. He cast an awkward glance in the male lead's direction. And what about him? He mumbled, unsure how to address the situation. Surprise etched on his face. The male lead exclaimed, what in the world is she talking about? Confusion evident in her voice. Xiaoning questioned, what does she mean? Xiaoning's voice dripped with suspicion. Why is he staring at her like that? She demanded, a hint of protectiveness in her tone. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, he stammered and abruptly sat down, avoiding eye contact. A blush crept up his neck, his gaze fixed intently on her. The male lead declared, I need to confirm something. Scrutinizing her features, he added, there's something I need to be absolutely certain of. Leaning in for a closer inspection, he concluded, I was sorely mistaken. He shook his head, a sigh escaping his lips. The women of today simply pale in comparison to those of my time. He added with a condescending tone, they are clearly not up to the same standards. Xian flashed him a thumbs up, signaling his complete agreement, bewilderment clouding her features. Xiaoying stammered, What did he just say? With a furious shriek, she slapped him across the face with all her might. You disgusting pervert, she raged. You belong in hell. Annoyance flickered in Hao Yan's eyes as he thought to himself, I couldn't help but notice her skirt was rather short. His thought trailed off, tinged with a hint of self-reproach, indignation burning in her chest. Xiaoying turned her back on him, refusing to acknowledge his presence. With a knowing smile, Xian turned to the protagonist and remarked, maintaining this facade of an innocent monk won't get you anywhere. It's a futile effort. Embrace your true self, he advised. Instead of trying to be someone you're not, enjoy life's simple pleasures with your companions. True happiness lies in authenticity and camaraderie. Yan rubbed his still smarting face, pondering Xian's words. He has a point, he mused internally. There was a time I was just like that, lost in thought. They continued their leisurely stroll, breaking the silence. Yan inquired, do girls at that age truly hold onto anger for such extended periods? Xian chuckled softly. Is that your experience with all of them? The protagonist's thoughts drifted inward. I'm far too old to comprehend the complexities of young people these days. He lamented silently. Their ways are a mystery to me. He observed a young woman hurrying by, her blue and white striped attire a blur of motion. Such youthful energy, he thought. He sighed, feeling a pang of nostalgia. This peaceful life, it's almost too tranquil. A blush crept onto his cheeks as he reminisced. Back when I sparred with the girls, he recalled fondly. They always dressed so impeccably. Xian's voice interrupted his reverie. lost in thought. What dreams occupy your mind? He asked playfully. Instead of daydreaming, Xian nudged him. Perhaps you should focus on apologizing to shouting. Even now, he admitted sheepishly. The mere thought of raising my voice around her fills me with dread. He inhaled deeply, steeling his nerves, and closed his eyes briefly. Suddenly, the protagonist called out to her, his voice surprisingly firm. Wait for me, he commanded. We need to talk. Scowling, she glared at him with undisguised annoyance. Leave me alone, she cried out, fleeing as fast as her legs could carry her. Stop following me, she demanded, her voice echoing behind her. Yun, please wait, he pleaded, desperately trying to keep pace. Just listen to me, you had to give me a chance to explain, he implored, struggling to catch his breath. I don't want to hear any of your excuses, she retorted angrily, continuing her frantic escape. Just go away, she yelled, refusing to even glance back at him. I don't want to speak to you. Suddenly, her foot caught on a loose rock, sending her tumbling forward. Yun, how Yan exclaimed, reacting instantly with a superhuman leap that landed him beside her. Be careful, he urged, his voice filled with concern. He swiftly caught her in his arms, preventing a painful fall. Stunned, she stared up at him with wide, surprised eyes. Did my friend just teleport? Xian wondered in disbelief. Does he have superpowers? Are you all right? Hao Yan asked, his voice slightly awkward as he met her gaze. Averting her eyes, she mumbled, I think so. Xiaoying pointed in the direction Hao Yan had come from, her eyebrows raised in question. Did you really jump that far? She asked incredulously. It would seem so, the protagonist replied, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Straightening herself, Xiaoying expressed her gratitude. Thank you, she said sincerely, for helping me. Xian chuckled. If he doesn't join the Olympic long jump team, he quipped, it'll be a national tragedy. The weight of the entire nation rested upon his shoulders. Failure would bring shame and disappointment to them all. The crowd gasped in awe. It was a truly astonishing leap, a feat of incredible athleticism. A collective murmur rippled through the onlookers. How on earth did he manage such a breathtaking jump? How was it even possible? Yan, visibly flustered, averted his gaze and confessed that he couldn't explain it. The jump seemed to defy his own understanding. Perhaps, someone suggested, it was the surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins, pushing him beyond his perceived limits. After all, a person's true potential is a boundless and often untapped reservoir of strength and ability. Xiaoying's enthusiastic cries cut through the air as she beckoned them over, waving her arms with unrestrained excitement. Come here, quick, she urged. Xian, his curiosity piqued, inquired as to what had caused such a commotion. What's going on? Xiaoying, shielding her eyes, expressed her bewilderment at the sudden intense light. Why is it so incredibly bright here? She asked. Squinting, the protagonist's eyes widened in terror as he gazed upon the shimmering spatial gate that had materialized before them. A chilling thought gripped him. This couldn't be happening. It was simply impossible. Where did this ominous portal to the dungeon originate? How could it have appeared here? He had been certain that he had successfully banished the demons back to their own realm, sealing them away forever. Suddenly, Yan's mind raced as he recalled the unsettling tavern tales of a mysterious and powerful figure. Fear gnawed at the protagonist as he stared at the pulsating portal. A dreadful question forming in his mind. Could this be the ominous being from the whispered legends? Was he the true source of the unending chaos? Was this the reason why the turmoil persisted? Why peace remained elusive? Agitated, he clutched his head in disbelief, vehemently denying the horrifying possibility. This simply cannot be true, he exclaimed. The ancient legends spoke of a formidable young man, his voice a thunderous roar. He spun around, his voice filled with concern, and anxiously inquired, what's wrong? Why was he behaving so strangely? So unlike himself? Was he all right? What could possibly be wrong? How could they find out? Yan was completely speechless, unable to utter a single word to her. A chilling thought crossed her mind. The portal to the dungeon was right there, directly in front of them. This could only mean one thing. History was on the verge of repeating itself. A terrifying prospect. Even if he remained silent, refusing to divulge any information, the very fabric of society, its current structure, would undergo an irreversible and unrecognizable transformation. However, He couldn't possibly be the catalyst for such a drastic change. Could he? Xian, approaching the portal with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, exclaimed in surprise. This is unmistakably an extraterrestrial gateway. An entrance to another dimension. Xiaoying, her voice laced with worry, asked, "Are you certain? Is this truly a portal to a different world? Could this actually be an entryway to another realm?" she questioned, her anxiety evident. "How?" Yan began, his voice trailing off in disbelief. With a serious expression, he declared that their best course of action was to seek guidance from a teacher. A master who could shed light on this mystery. He would remain there, safeguarding the portal. Until they returned, he would stand guard, ensuring its protection. Xiaoying inquired, "Does he intend to face this alone? Does he plan to shoulder this burden by himself?" The protagonist felt a surge of responsibility. He knew he had to investigate. To venture into the unknown, he needed to step through the portal and personally assess the situation. To see with his own eyes what lay beyond. Embracing her, he reassured her, offering comfort and strength. "Everything will be all right," he promised. "I'll be fine. Even if something were to happen, I'll be okay. Don't worry." His escape would be swift, surpassing all others in speed. Consequently, their departure was imperative. Matters of this nature demanded the attention of experienced adults. His internal monologue echoed this sentiment, a shared conviction that a swift retreat from this unsettling location was paramount. Addressing her directly, the protagonist urged their immediate departure. A hasty return would ensure their well-being, promising his safety and relieving any anxieties. The sooner they left, the better. Xiaoying, her gaze lowered, inquired softly, "Do you pledge to prioritize your own safety?" Yan's counter-question followed swiftly, reassuring her and dismissing any need for concern on his behalf. "Don't you worry about me. Could any true harm befall them in this place? Perhaps fortune favored them, promising untold riches. What if this was their chance to strike it rich?" Time elapsed, solidifying the protagonist's assurance of their companion's departure. He was finally convinced they had left, his gaze fixed upon the portal. He channeled his latent abilities. A deafening detonation erupted, accompanied by a blinding golden lightning bolt that engulfed him. Yan, transformed once more into an elderly figure, ignited a cigarette. The protagonist, his eyes set on the portal, embarked on an expedition into a new realm. He stepped into the portal to explore another world. 5 years hence, dungeon portals materialized across the globe. These gateways underwent periodic resets and material replenishment, their contents continuously refreshed. And within these extraordinary portals, mana, the lifeblood of magic, gradually supplanted traditional energy sources. This monumental shift ushered in an era of profound societal transformation. Now, a hopeful throng of aspiring mages eagerly awaited their chance to take the entrance exam, forming a long queue that snaked in front of the imposing guild headquarters. Young clenched her fist tightly, her other hand clutching a worn book adorned with the image of a valiant warrior. With vibrant enthusiasm, she spoke of her fervent dream, to gain admittance to the prestigious academy, and finally meet the legendary master at the grand opening ceremony. She pressed the book close to her heart, a hopeful smile gracing her lips as she mused, What if I actually get in?" She felt an almost tangible connection to the hero, believing herself to be mere steps away from the man who single-handedly saved the world. Howen, our protagonist, pondered her words, realizing the irony. She felt so close, yet the distance remained immeasurable. After all, he was the founder of the guild's very first academy, a sanctuary for those blessed with extraordinary abilities, a place that had nurtured countless renowned hunters. Suddenly, Young flung her arms around Haoyan's neck, clinging to him playfully as she asked if he wanted to hear the master's tale once more. Haoyan, sensing her growing infatuation, gently but firmly disentangled himself from her embrace. He dismissed the idea, stating it wasn't necessary. He jokingly added that hearing the same request repeatedly was giving him an earache. Back in the initial stages of his career, he'd relied on media exposure to rapidly establish both the academy and the guild's reputations. This strategy had been a double-edged sword, with the most significant disadvantage being his unintentional transformation into an idol. Enyang crossed her arms, a skeptical expression on her face, and retorted that if he possessed even a fraction of the master's power, she wouldn't have any reason to be concerned for his well-being. His public appearances had become increasingly infrequent lately. How Yan surmised he must be overwhelmed with responsibilities. Spreading his arms in an awkward gesture accompanied by a forced smile, he expressed his strong aversion to attending the Hunter Academy, pleading to be allowed to enroll in a regular university instead. He argued that his awakened ability remained dormant, leading to his inevitable failure of the entrance examination. He questioned the point of wasting any more time on a futile endeavor. "Why bother?" he asked rhetorically. She indignantly placed her hands on her hips. Countering his argument with a firm tone, she emphasized the exceptional nature of his ability, asserting that a thorough explanation to the examiners would guarantee their appreciation and recognition of his potential. The protagonist sighed dramatically, leaning to one side. Despite his protests and social awkwardness, she forcefully grabbed him by the collar, practically dragging him toward the guild hall. She declared that she would personally explain everything, taking charge of the situation. As they passed by the curious onlookers, the hunters who were clearly paying attention to their little spectacle, she impatiently shouted, "Come on," urging him forward. "Let's get going. His ancestors are depending on him," she exclaimed dramatically, adding pressure to the already flustered young man. "An opportunity like this only comes once in a blue moon," she emphasized, highlighting the rarity of the situation. He can't afford to let it slip away. Yan could practically feel himself being dragged along the ground, struggling to keep up with her energetic pace. He lamented that he couldn't even recall his great-great-grandfather's name, let alone live up to such lofty expectations. No one present held any hope for him, their skepticism palpable. He felt the weight of their doubt bearing down on him. The burden of leading a double life weighed heavily on him. He feared he was on the verge of a complete breakdown, unable to maintain the facade any longer. Perhaps confessing everything to her was the only solution. Then, Ningning turned to him, a playful smile gracing her lips. She offered a tantalizing proposition. If he passed the exam, she would. He impatiently interjected, "So what?" Eager to hear the rest of her offer, she shyly leaned in, whispering something in his ear that made his blood rush. Her words sent a wave of heat through him, causing his head to practically steam. His eyes widened in astonishment, his face flushing crimson as he processed the shocking promise. He nervously rose to his feet, his eyes shyly glancing at her. Turning around, she inquired, "Will he succeed?" He responded with a confident thumbs up, assuring her of his friend's victory. Smoke puffed from his nostrils as he boisterously declared, "No problem." A flashback revealed a scene from 5 years prior, a spirited 20-year-old shouting, possessing the prowess of a skilled hunter, tilted her head back and luxuriated in a refreshing shower. The past is irrelevant, she mused. What truly matters is the profound transformation the world has undergone in the last 5 years. She too had evolved significantly during this time. Emerging from the shower, she gracefully settled onto the sofa beside the protagonist, a carton of milk in hand. "Haoyan," she began, "it's sweltering in here." She requested that he activate the air conditioner. He sensed that her newfound strength had awakened something deep within her, a transformation that extended beyond mere physical power. He awkwardly averted his gaze from her towel-clad form, stammering, "Well, he's a man." She leaned closer, her eyes locking with his. "Indeed," she purred, drawing nearer still. Her gaze held his captive as she softly asked, "And have you located the remote for the air conditioner?" After what seemed like an eternity of searching, did he manage to find the remote control for the air conditioner? It was the key to his comfort in this sweltering heat. He cast a nervous glance at her, a blush creeping up his cheeks. Then, clutching his head in his hands, he blurted out a desperate question. Had she just asked him why he even wanted to live with her? The thought made his heart race. That's why, a while back, a poignant memory resurfaced. His parents, faces etched with a bittersweet mixture of sadness and excitement, waved goodbye from the backseat of their departing car. His father's voice echoed in his mind. "Son, your mother and I are embarking on a journey around the world." As the car pulled away, growing smaller with each passing moment, he yelled after them, his voice cracking with emotion, "Inning will take care of me now." Back in the present, the bustling world of the Academy registration office snapped him back to reality. It was their turn to officially enroll. Turning to the registration worker, Inning politely requested that both of them be registered. The worker presented them with a tablet, its screen glowing softly. "Please fill out these required documents," she instructed, her voice gentle and professional. Moments later, Inning returned to the worker. Tablet in hand. "We've completed the forms," she announced, a confident smile gracing her lips. The worker informed them, "The entrance examination will be held in 2 months. You'll receive a notification by mail." "Understood," Ning responded with a nod, her expression reflecting her calm assurance. Ning replied with a reassuring smile, indicating her understanding. Then, with a warm smile, the worker held out a pair of fighter keychains. "Small tokens of welcome. Here are some of our exclusive merchandise items," she offered kindly. "Best of luck on your exam." The words echoed in the room. The protagonist picked up a well-worn, older version of his action figure, a nostalgic relic from his childhood, and pondered, whose brilliant idea was this anyway? This is going to force them to slash their salaries, he muttered to himself, frustration evident in his voice. India gently kissed the toy, a gesture of affection and determination. "My hero," she whispered. "I'm already on my way." A look of astonishment washed over the protagonist's face as he observed the scene. He lowered his gaze, lost in contemplation. "Even though it's just a toy modeled after me," he mused. "Why do I feel an inexplicable sense of connection? Like I'm being watched?" Sometime later, within the bustling halls of the Hunters Guild, Feinan, the highly efficient head secretary, and a key member of the Hunters Guild administration, possessed a remarkable and rare ability, significantly enhanced cognitive skills. The Slayer, a seasoned hunter renowned for his prowess, entered Feinan's office, placing a hefty stack of documents upon his desk. "Sir," he announced, "these are the dungeon evaluations forwarded by the European Guild branches. He needs to review and process these within 72 hours. The Slayer continued, emphasizing the urgency. "Furthermore, a new portal linked to an A-rank dungeon has manifested in Zone A." He paused, allowing the weight of the information to sink in. "Neither the government nor any other guilds have issued a call for hunters yet." He added, "Everyone is awaiting your decision on how to proceed." "Sir," overwhelmed by the immense responsibility, Feinan looked at the Slayer with an expression of utter despair. His body trembled as he confessed, his voice wavering, I can't go on any longer." Turning towards him with a concerned expression, she offered a revitalizing herbal tonic, gently urging him to drink. With a delicate gesture, she placed a refreshing carton of drinks atop a towering stack of paperwork. She approached the table, her presence commanding as she grasped a whip firmly in her hand. Unfazed, the protagonist tilted his head back, his determination unwavering as he diligently continued his task. Leaning on his fist in a moment of reflection, he fondly recalled a shopping trip with Inning. The weight of the bags a tangible memory. The image of carrying those heavy bags lingered in his mind. He waved his hand dismissively, a sigh escaping his lips as he mused. "I'm not getting any younger, am I?" With a confident air, the secretary perched herself on the corner of his desk. She crossed her legs elegantly, exuding an aura of self-assuredness. Picking up a sheaf of papers, she proposed a deal, her voice smooth and alluring. "If you double my salary, I'll gladly take care of all this paperwork for you," she finished, her eyes sparkling with promise. Adjusting her glasses with a thoughtful touch, she inquired, "What do you say?" The exterminator paused, then responded, "If I recall correctly, your salary is already a staggering 100,000 more coins." He added pointedly, "And it increases practically every month." He couldn't help but remark, a hint of exasperation in his voice, "You have a real talent for draining my funds." Fanning pressed him, her tone insistent. "So, do we have a deal or not?" she warned. "If you refuse, I estimate it will take you 17 days, 5 hours, and 37 minutes to sort through these documents yourself." Extending a hand towards her, he signaled his agreement with a simple deal. Following the agreement, Fine delicately adjusted the choker adorning her neck. With a swift removal of her glasses, a vibrant digital aura materialized, encircling her form. The time she had saved through her enhanced abilities amounted to precisely 1 minute. Replacing her glasses, she addressed him respectfully. "Sir, my augmented cognitive functions are classified as specialized proficiencies," she clarified. "Therefore," she continued, "a corresponding salary increase is certainly warranted." The exterminator, momentarily stunned, fixed his gaze upon her. He then requested her assistance in compiling a comprehensive report, and further tasked her with expediting several overdue projects. A thought sparked in his mind. He needed to devise a method of replicating her extraordinary ability. And do it swiftly. For every passing day, this seemingly innocent prodigy was draining his financial resources at an alarming rate. Placing her hand upon the towering stack of papers, she responded, "Certainly, sir." After all, fulfilling his requests was an integral part of her responsibilities. She then brought to his attention a crucial upcoming event at the end of the following month. A pivotal juncture in her career. The entrance examination for the prestigious Hunter Academy. Just 3 days prior to this momentous occasion, she would meticulously craft a speech and dispatch it via postal service. "Please ensure you don't neglect to peruse them," she implored. She playfully wagged a finger at him, reminding him of the previous year's incident, when he arrived a full 30 minutes behind schedule, forcing him into a protracted explanation to the assembled journalists. "The more elevated your position becomes," she emphasized, "the more imperative it is to exercise stringent control over your words and deeds. After all," she continued, "you are the revered idol of this new era and must diligently maintain your public image." The fighter, offering an awkward grin, dismissively waved his hand and uttered a hasty, "Understood, understood." He then playfully retorted that she was too youthful to offer such pronouncements, adding that he needed to attend to some pressing personal affairs first. She acquiesced, granting him permission to prioritize his personal matters. Following this exchange, she departed from the office, letting the door swing shut with a resounding slam. The protagonist, reverting to his more youthful appearance, initiated a call to Inning, adorned with her bracelet and engrossed in culinary preparations, answered the incoming call, inquiring as to the reason for his delayed response. He placed a hand over his mouth, whispering in a hushed tone, "I've decided to embark on an adventure to the quest room with my companions. And besides, using your phone here is strictly prohibited." She examined the hologram more closely before conceding. "All right, fine." On a completely unrelated note, that outfit swallows him whole. Next time, he should pick something that actually fits. Even better, have him bring me the double leaf lock I requested, and tell him to hurry back, or his dinner will turn into a cold, unappetizing mess. He offered an uncomfortable smile and mumbled, "Okay, understood. I'll head over right after we finish this call." He pictured himself, a dashing slayer, finally revealing his true identity, confessing to her, "It's me, I'm Jin Huyan." A heavy sigh escaped his lips. He knew he had to devise a plan, a way to reveal the truth without causing chaos. Smiling, he realized that despite the noticeable age gap, taking orders from a young girl didn't wound his pride as much as he'd thought. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't so terrible. At least singing was alive, thriving, and safe from harm. Though a bit exhausting at times, the long-awaited day of the entrance exam had finally dawned. The prestigious Hunter Academy stood as the first institution of its kind. Established in the wake of the new era, a throng of aspiring hunters had assembled outside the guild hall, their anticipation palpable. Inyang's eyes widened as she surveyed the scene, breathing a soft, "Wow, there are so many more applicants this year compared to last," she remarked, noting the significant increase in potential recruits. A burst of joyful energy propelled her forward, a bright smile illuminating her face. Hao Yan, observing her enthusiasm, extended a hand in her direction, cautioning, "Well, the academy has been established for 4 years now, you know, and its reputation for excellence continues to grow with each passing day." He added, explaining the crowd's size, "Careful now, or she'll collide with someone." A nearby voice warned, hinting at Inyang's exuberant rush. As if on cue, Inyang bumped squarely into Keita, the impact momentarily stunning them both. Recovering quickly, she stepped back, bowing deeply in apology for her unintentional clumsiness. "I'm so sorry," she stammered. "I didn't see you there." Keita, flustered by the encounter, brought his hands to his chest and averted his gaze awkwardly. It's quite all right," he mumbled, reassuring her. "No harm done. There's no need for apologies," he added softly, hoping to ease her embarrassment. Then, with an abrupt about-face, he turned and fled in the opposite direction, a blush creeping up his neck. Yingying, observing the interaction, turned to the protagonist with a knowing look and asked, "See? That's a textbook example of a true social phobia in action. Wouldn't you agree?" Hao Yan chuckled, gently nudging her forward with a playful smile. All right, he conceded. humoring her observation. He's not socially awkward or anxious in the slightest. Quite the contrary. He's incredibly outgoing and thrives in social situations. But now, they faced a pressing matter: getting inside quickly. He urgently needed to use the restroom. And not just any restroom, the one in the auditorium. The very auditorium where the crucial entrance exam was about to commence. Aimin glanced at her watch. Her voice filled with anxiety as she spoke. The exam is about to begin. And he's nowhere in sight. Feigning composure, a figure stood on the stage, microphone in hand, addressing the assembled candidates. Distinguished candidates. The voice boomed. The introductory briefing will commence in 1 minute. Please maintain silence and find your designated seats with all due haste. Inning's worry escalated into a full-blown internal panic. If he's late, she thought, her heart pounding, it could leave a disastrous first impression. Where could he be at such a critical moment? What was he doing? Just then, a figure approached the secretary's desk. Adjusting her glasses, the secretary spoke, a hint of surprise in her voice. You're actually on time, sir. Remarkable. A surge of pride washed over her. Yet a nagging question lingered. Why was he drenched in sweat? He recalled the frantic rush to get ready, the hurried dressing. He burst through the auditorium doors. A sheepish grin plastered across his face as he stammered. Really? Then, letting out a nervous chuckle, he offered an explanation. It must be awfully hot out there today. He was acutely aware of the perspiration drenching his clothes. Of course, he thought. He had quickly changed in the restroom, stuffed his original attire out of sight, and sprinted here as if his life depended on it. After all, he wasn't a spring chicken anymore. The years had caught up. The secretary offered him the microphone with a reassuring smile, advising him, "Don't worry, just give us a few more minutes." The event was about to commence. Several hunters in the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause, their voices booming. Mr. Exterminator has arrived. Taking the microphone in hand, the protagonist greeted the crowd warmly. Welcome, everyone. His gaze then shifted towards Inyang, who sprang to her feet, beaming and waving enthusiastically in his direction. My idol, she thought, silently wishing him luck. Bless him with success. She made a mental note to snag an autograph later. This was her chance. Her eyes, filled with adoration, remained fixed on the stage. The exterminator, overwhelmed by the attention, stood frozen. Beads of sweat trickled down his temples. His eyes widened in disbelief as a single thought echoed in his mind. Oh, damn. The moment his eyes landed on Yin Yang, his carefully prepared lyrics vanished from his mind. A wave of panic washed over those backstage, especially the anxious figure of feigning. What's happening? They wondered. Confused murmurs rippled through the group. Why has he gone silent? Did that old fool forget the words? Someone whispered impatiently. Then, with unwavering determination, the protagonist shouted, "Best of luck to everyone on their exams." His abrupt ending was met with a stunned silence. The secretary buried her face in her hands, muttering, "Just as I feared." But suddenly, the hall erupted in thunderous applause. The audience roared their approval. "Brevity is the soul of wit," they exclaimed. "Mr. Fighter is incredibly cool. No wonder he's considered the absolute best." Fanyang's face contorted in a mixture of shock and amusement. "Well," she conceded, "I suppose that worked too." Later, within the examination hall, Inian furiously grabbed Yun's cheek, demanding to know where he had been. Yun, biting his lip nervously, explained that the opening ceremony had already started, and he was too embarrassed to enter now. So, he had been waiting there anxiously. He nervously scratched the back of his head, a blush creeping up his cheeks. He pleaded with her, hoping she wouldn't be upset. "Don't worry," she reassured him, explaining that their assigned rooms were adjacent. "These things happen." She added that, in all likelihood, they would be taking the exams together. He knew he couldn't disappoint her. He had to give it his absolute best. "I won't let you down," he vowed silently. Suddenly, the automated system announced, "Number 121, and number 122. Please proceed to the testing platform." She turned to him, a warm smile gracing her lips. "That's us," she said. "Our turn. Let's go." As they settled into their designated spots, the examiner's voice boomed. "Candidates," he instructed, "please step onto the designated testing area. Relax your arms at your sides and maintain a forward gaze." The scanning process commenced, and Hanging was awarded 3 stars. The attendant, beaming, announced the result. Awakening level 3 stars, he declared. Overjoyed, she pumped her fist in the air. Hooray, she exclaimed. 3 stars, she remarked. That's a solid average. The attendant offered her a kind smile and wished her success in the upcoming test. Clasping her hands together politely, she replied, "Thank you." The examiner meticulously reviewed the protagonist's assessment results, his gaze scanning every detail. A flicker of concern crossed his face as an unexpected error message flashed on the screen. "It appears," he began, addressing the protagonist directly, "that Jean Hajian's ability has yet to manifest." He paused, then offered a cautious recommendation. "In this circumstance, I strongly advise against participating in the entrance exam. The risks of injury are substantial." The protagonist responded with a nervous chuckle, inquiring uncertainly, "Are you suggesting I should forfeit the opportunity to compete?" A subtle smile played on the examiner's lips as he inwardly mused. Elimination at this stage would undoubtedly simplify matters considerably, especially considering the potential complications. He added silently, "That could arise later. The constant need for disguise and concealment would become quite burdensome indeed." Suddenly, Indian impulsively seized him by the collar, forcing an uncomfortable grin as he blurted out, "Actually, I possess a unique ability, the power of replication." He offered this revelation with a hopeful inflection, suggesting it might hold the key to the situation. The examiner's eyes widened slightly. "Ah," he responded thoughtfully, "the ability to mimic others. Intriguing," he reiterated, as if confirming his understanding. "The power to precisely duplicate the skills and attributes of others." A genuine smile spread across his face as he gave a reassuring thumbs up. "A truly exceptional gift," he declared. His thoughts, however, betrayed a hint of surprise. "I never anticipated encountering such a rare and remarkable talent," he mused internally. To possess such extraordinary ability among the assembled participants, truly remarkable. While his companion was merely a 3-star individual, perplexed, he nonetheless offered words of encouragement, wishing him success in the upcoming trial. Yan responded with an uncomfortable smile and a mumbled expression of gratitude. A wave of misfortune seemed to wash over him. Luck was decidedly not on his side today. Kita approached the designated examination area, ready to face the next challenge. Adjusting his headphones into position, he advanced with a quiet determination, his steps measured and silent. One of the examiners gestured towards him, his voice filled with inquiry. "Is this the infamous Liketa we've heard so much about?" His colleague chimed in, asserting with unwavering certainty, "There's no doubt he's merely a 1-star individual. Even if he manages to gain entry into the academy, he'll undoubtedly be relegated to the lowest, most undesirable class." His initial statement was met with a resounding affirmation, followed by a mocking chuckle. A genius sister paired with an utterly worthless brother. The irony is almost palpable. Observing the unfolding scene, the protagonist pondered the notion that even luck could be considered a form of talent. The worst class, a curious designation. He had no recollection of such a class existing within the academy. A discreet inquiry to finding seemed to be in order. She would surely possess the necessary information. Finding approached Kata with a friendly wave and a cheerful greeting. "Oh, hello there, speak of the devil," he muttered, lowering his headphones and acknowledging her presence. "Oh, here we go again," they muttered under their breath. Rolling their eyes, with a gentle smile, she expressed her surprise, remarking, "I never would have guessed you were number 123. It turned out that fate had placed him at the same examination station as them. A coincidence that surprised everyone. He confessed his anxieties, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm so afraid of failing this exam." The weight of responsibility burdened him. "If I fail, I'll let my sister down." With unwavering encouragement, she urged him to lift his chin, her voice filled with conviction. "Don't you dare give up hope," he retorted with a hint of defiance. "So what if I only have 1 star? His voice laced with bitterness. He added, "But that's just the bare minimum for awakening." Despair crept into his tone. "It's like having no future. No potential whatsoever," he scoffed. "No one's ever heard of a 1-star reaching the same heights as a 3-star. Resignation filled his voice. "I might as well just quit now." The protagonist approached him, his presence radiating a quiet strength, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder and clenching his other fist. He exuded determination. With unwavering conviction, he declared, The academy seeks more than just those who have awakened once. He offered a glimmer of hope. If you possess other talents, you can gain entry through special recruitment. Echoing the girl's sentiment, he added firmly, so lift your head high. Don't give up. Inning grabbed his shoulder, her finger pointing directly at him. Emphasizing her words, with unwavering confidence, she exclaimed, "You absolutely can." Gesturing towards the protagonist, she exclaimed, "Look at this guy. He doesn't even have 1 star." Her voice filled with admiration. She concluded, "But does he let that bother him?" "Not one bit." Kita's voice was filled with astonishment. "Not a single star without superpowers? How is that possible?" The protagonist countered with a knowing smile. "It's not quite as simple as that. I possess the unique ability to replicate others' powers," he revealed. Just then, an unwelcome interruption occurred. Yang Wei and his entourage swaggered towards them, with hands casually tucked into his pockets. He sneered condescendingly, "And who might this nobody be? Does he even have the qualifications to participate in the examination?" he scoffed. "Let his sister pull some strings and get him in, as she always does." Yang Wei mocked. His companion let out a derisive chuckle. Adding insult to injury, the esteemed eldest daughter of the Li family wouldn't bother herself with such a worthless, incompetent brother. A third member of the group, arms crossed defiantly, chimed in with a sneer. "Indeed, a complete and utter disgrace to the entire family lineage," he declared. "They should have severed all ties with this good-for-nothing long ago." Kita lowered her head slightly and uttered a warning. Yang Wei, he should have heeded her words and stopped. But he didn't. In a flash of righteous anger, the hunter seized Yang Wei's shirt, his voice booming with indignation. "Did he just mumble something? He needs to speak up. I can't hear a word he's saying." Kata complained. He awkwardly extended his hand, gesturing for the other person to release his grip. Suddenly, Yingning shoved him forcefully, shouting, "Hey, let go of him," she commanded. His companion leapt forward to catch him, exclaiming, "Careful there, brother." Wei, the bully, leaned against his friend for support, pointing accusingly ahead. "Damn girl," he yelled. "Does she even have a clue who she's messing with? Let me make one thing crystal clear," he threatened. "The path to Hunter Academy is now officially closed to her." Indignantly, she retorted, "And just who does he think he is?" The protagonist inquired, "Who is this guy? What family is he from? The Yang clan?" He seemed to recall something. Niang glanced at him, surprised, thinking to himself, "How does he know about us?" Wei pointed at the protagonist and angrily exclaimed, "You mutt, who do you think you are? Trying to play the hero? Are we?" He suggested that the newcomer vanish into thin air, making himself scarce. The protagonist, a subtle smirk playing on his lips, casually slipped his hands into his pockets, and nonchalantly inquired if this advice was directed at him. He clarified his position, stating he was merely one among many students participating in the upcoming examination. Wei, a cunning glint in his eyes, responded with a sly, "Is that so?" He pointed out that since fate had brought them together, it would be beneficial for them to become acquainted. Stepping closer, he asserted that their paths would inevitably cross during the examination. Before pivoting abruptly and heading in the opposite direction, Keda approached Haoyan, placing a hand on his chest in a threatening gesture. Vowing retribution for the perceived slight, he accused Haoyan of unnecessary interference, claiming he was unjustly targeted for his actions. Yingning retorted with a fierce determination, guaranteeing they would indeed meet again. She scoffed, questioning if he believed he had instilled fear in them. Confronting Kata, she demanded to know the reason behind his initial antagonism towards Haoyan. She lamented the ubiquity of such bullies, encouraging Haoyan to overcome his fear and stand up to them. In response, he expressed remorse for entangling them in the conflict. He averted his gaze, a blush creeping onto his cheeks, and mumbled, "Well, Yang Wei. She's the esteemed heir of the formidable Liang family. She wields considerable influence and boasts a vast network of connections, holding a permanent seat on the Academy's prestigious board of directors. Even if we manage to pass this examination, she might still find a way to make our lives difficult." She gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, offering a comforting smile. "Don't fret, everything will be all right." The protagonist met his gaze with determination, declaring, "We need to focus on preparing for the upcoming trial." He then glanced sideways, lost in thought. "The Yang family," he mused, recalling their encounter shortly after entering the labyrinth. An academy official announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. This assessment has a time limit of 30 minutes. Failure to emerge from the labyrinth within the allotted time will result in immediate disqualification. He raised his hand, commanding attention. Beware, he bellowed. The labyrinth is fraught with perilous traps. Challenges you must overcome using your own resourcefulness and skills. Commencement in 15 seconds. I wish you all the best of luck. The aspiring heroes then advanced towards the imposing entrance of the labyrinth. Inying nervously clasped her hands to her chest. Her eyes fixated on Yen vehemently declared that he absolutely had to succeed this time. As Wei passed by them, he observed their interaction and noted, in English, "Good luck, Cade," to which Cade awkwardly responded, I'll do my best." The host announced the commencement of the countdown, his voice booming through the arena. And with that, the main characters ventured into the intricate labyrinth. He strolled leisurely through the maze, contemplating whether to pause for a moment's rest. He considered taking the shortcut, a secret passage known only to him. Utilizing this hidden route would allow him to exit the labyrinth in a mere 5 minutes. After all, he was the architect of this complex maze, its creator. He glanced to the side, a thoughtful expression on his face. He pondered how anyone would navigate the labyrinth's numerous traps and challenges. A smile graced his lips as he reassured himself that there was no need for haste. Emerging too quickly would be incongruous with his current, deliberately understated persona. It wouldn't align with the image he was projecting. The calculated air of mystery he maintained. With a sudden burst of energy, he surged forward, exclaiming, "All right then, let's go." He swiftly concealed himself behind a wall. Seeking cover, he observed Ningning confidently traversing the labyrinth, her steps sure and purposeful. Carefully peering around the corner, he mused to himself that she could at least display a modicum of excitement or anticipation. The examination, as anticipated, proved to be quite challenging. Suddenly, a 2-star mimic demon lunged at her with surprising ferocity. The creature obstructed her path, skillfully employing a cunning trap technique. Nin, however, met the demon's aggression with unwavering confidence. Extending her hand resolutely, with a bold taunt, she cried out, "Hey, you imbecile!" Amused by the demon's immobility, she questioned mockingly, "Why are you frozen? Are you perhaps frightened?" The demon, enraged by her taunts, lashed out with its elongated claws, menacingly reaching for her. With agile reflexes, she deftly leapt aside, exclaiming, "Gotcha!" As the demon inadvertently stepped onto a strategically placed magic symbol, she seized the opportunity, closing the distance and pointing accusingly while declaring, "One of the defining characteristics of demons is their inherent lack of intellect." She continued, emphasizing, "They are notoriously susceptible to provocation, and engaging in direct combat is demonstrably not their forte." Observing the unfolding events from a vantage point atop the wall, the protagonist mused approvingly, "Impressive. A truly exceptional student exemplifies excellence in all endeavors." He concluded with a satisfied nod. It appears she has already mastered the fundamental principles. Jotting down his observations in his rudimentary textbook, he noted, "Her performance is exemplary, showcasing an abundance of innate talent." A sudden, brilliant flash erupted from the depths of the labyrinth, illuminating the next passage. Yin, noticing the unexpected light, immediately darted towards its source. She called out urgently, her voice echoing through the maze, "Kita's over there. He's in trouble." Yan observed her hasty departure with a knowing smile, remarking to himself, "That girl, always rushing in, sticking her nose in everyone else's affairs." Just then, Wei launched a brutal attack, sending Kita crashing into the solid stone wall. Wei stood over him, his voice dripping with arrogance. Well, Liketa, giving up already?" He pointed a mocking finger at the fallen Kita. A cruel smirk twisted his lips as he continued, "Where are your protectors now? Why isn't anyone rushing to your aid? I thought you had friends." He paused, feigning confusion. "They should be swarming us by now, considering how loud-mouthed they usually are." Kita, gritting his teeth in pain and shielding his face with his hands, insisted, "I don't know them. They're nothing to me. Leave them out of this. They have nothing to do with it." He pleaded desperately, "There's no need to harm them." Wei exploded in fury. "What nonsense are you spouting? Do you expect me to believe that strangers would risk their lives for you without reason? Do you think I'm that gullible?" Kita, leaning heavily against the wall for support, rose to his feet, Wei declared. He brought this punishment upon himself. It was his own mistake. With a smug grin, Wei continued. His sister was simply fulfilling her duty. So what if his family are guild shareholders? That doesn't excuse his behavior. Their money pays her salary. She's obligated to uphold the rules. He probably believes his sister loathes him more than he despises himself. Which is saying something. He's the family disgrace. A stain on their reputation. With a dismissive thumbs down, Wei bellowed. Utterly worthless. His sister awakened an incredible power. A force to be reckoned with. While his younger brother? He's nothing. A complete disappointment. Every expectation placed upon him crumbled into dust. Despite sharing the same bloodline, a vast chasm separates them. He's nothing but trash. A pathetic excuse for a cultivator. His mere existence serves as a stark reminder that even among geniuses, failures can be born. Wei's cruel words hung heavy in the air. Overwhelmed by shame, Kata collapsed, clutching his head in his hands. Looming over him, Wei focused energy into his palm and spoke menacingly. Tell me, Kata, will you surrender willingly? Or will I have to persuade you? I refuse to waste my time studying alongside such pathetic trash. Just then, Yining emerged from behind the wall, her voice ringing with conviction. Someone who constantly resorts to belittling others, she declared. Someone who incessantly labels their peers as trash doesn't deserve the privilege of being her classmate. He may have superior abilities, she continued, her gaze fixed on Wei. But should he be so arrogant? Is there any true merit in such behavior? Wei simply stared back at her and retorted. Here we go again with this impertinent girl. A sly smile then spread across his face as he added, possessing strong abilities merely indicates superior genetics. It's a matter of inherent advantage. He paused, a cruel glint in his eyes. Those lacking such inherent gifts, well, they should simply be eliminated. Yin Yang stepped forward. Approaching Kita, she extended a hand towards him in a gesture of comfort and stated, So, it appears we have a staunch believer in social Darwinism among us. Her expression softened as she turned to Kita, her voice filled with genuine concern. How can you tolerate this? She asked gently. How can you endure such blatant disregard for human decency? Can you even stand to be in his presence? Kita, visibly embarrassed, could only nod, silently confirming her words. He mumbled that there was no need for her to intervene. To defend him, he insisted that she should prioritize her studies and the upcoming examination. Yin Yang retorted with a confident smile, assuring him that passing the exam wouldn't be an issue for her. Then, pointing a finger directly at Wei, she declared with unwavering resolve that she refused to be subjected to the same learning environment as someone so morally bankrupt. She proposed a radical idea. The academy should incorporate a personality assessment as part of its entrance examination process, serving as a rigorous filter to ensure only the most qualified candidates gain entry. Concealed behind the wall, the protagonist observed the proceedings intently. He picked up a stray piece of parchment, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Let's document this, he mused, jotting down notes with meticulous care. He glanced at Yin Yang, a flicker of admiration in his eyes for her bold directness. He appreciated her candid approach. Suddenly, a grotesque creature materialized beside him. Shattering the moment, the monster lunged towards him, its limbs outstretched, emitting a guttural growl that reverberated through the air. Yan steadied his nerves, a spark of determination igniting within him. All right, he thought resolutely, perhaps it's time to put my own abilities to the test. He pondered, assessing the situation. With a swift, decisive motion, he delivered a powerful blow to the monster's abdomen. The creature disintegrated instantly, shattering into countless minuscule fragments. The protagonist closed his eyes briefly, making a mental note. Far too slow, he concluded. A labyrinth reconfiguration is necessary after this examination. Emerging from his concealment, he called out in a commanding voice. Hey, you imbecile! He paused, recalling the admonition against raising one's voice. Did I just yell? Wei whirled around, a wide grin spreading across his face. Well, he exclaimed. Another one arrives. Are we engaging in a 2-on-1 scenario now? A tremor of fear began to course through him, but then, his eyes widened in astonishment. Astonishment washed over Wei as the protagonist materialized in midair before him. He marveled at the protagonist's incredible speed, thinking he was a blur. observing the scene unfold on a large monitor. Feigning, with a calculating gaze, directed a nearby technician to zoom in on camera feed number 4. Enhance the image from camera 04. She commanded. 04. This line seems redundant and can be removed for smoother flow. The technician, eyes glued to his tablet screen, confirmed he was complying with her request. As you instructed, ma'am, he replied. The magnified image displayed the protagonist cocking his arm back, preparing to strike Wei. As the hand rapidly approached, Wei's eyes widened in alarm. Before he could react, a resounding slap echoed across the area. How dare you? Yan's voice boomed, filled with righteous fury. It seems someone needs a lesson in respect. He added with a disdainful sneer. I'll gladly provide it. His tone dripped with menace. Witnessing the unexpected slap, Kita gasped. Did he just? She began, utterly stunned. A slap? She finished, her hand flying to her mouth in disbelief. He actually slapped him? Lost in thought, she released a heavy sigh. He launched into another tirade, his voice filled with the familiar grumbling of an old man admonishing the world. Feigning, her attention fixed on the camera feed, adjusted her glasses and offered a knowing smile. This young man, she mused, he reminds me of someone. Wei, rubbing his stinging cheek, sputtered indignantly. That brat, how dare he strike him? He exclaimed in disbelief. He focused his energy, gathering it within his palms and thrusting them forward. Die, you freak, he roared. Suddenly, Yan materialized before him, interjecting, if you don't discipline him now, it will be too late. He warned with a stern expression. He delivered a swift blow, striking the offender squarely. It's time you learned to speak respectfully, he declared, his voice resonating with authority. In the real world, such insolence will not be tolerated. He emphasized that there would be consequences for such behavior. Wei dropped to one knee nearby, channeling energy into his hand, a fierce determination in his eyes. I won't forgive this, he bellowed, bracing himself with a hand on the ground. He unleashed his Hydro Dash ability, vanishing and reappearing instantly behind the protagonist, his teeth clenched in a furious grimace. He launched a powerful punch. You're finished, he raged. Just then, Yan appeared beside him, calmly stating, young man, there's no need for such a fiery temper. He advised against such impulsive actions, adding, above all else, remember to maintain your composure. He stressed the importance of courtesy and respect. With a swift, decisive kick, he connected squarely with Wei's head, sending several teeth flying through the air. The bully, Wei, spun around, pointing an accusatory finger and yelling, who the hell does he think he is? Lecturing me? With effortless ease, the protagonist knocked Wei unconscious, leaving Kita utterly astonished. Amazing, she exclaimed. Does he possess the same extraordinary abilities? She wondered aloud. She was completely bewildered by how the protagonist had defeated Wei with a single kick, especially considering he was merely at level 0. Such a display of power at his level was simply astounding. Almost unbelievable. Had he undergone a sudden awakening? Just then, Yingying approached the protagonist, hands planted firmly on her hips, and declared indignantly, hey, he's stealing the spotlight again. He glanced at her, explaining calmly that he simply wanted to teach the impulsive boy a lesson. He added that he couldn't bear to see her being harassed. Then, with a confident stride and a friendly smile, he announced, all right everyone, enough chit-chat. The exam will be concluding shortly. It's time to head in. Yingying crossed her arms and retorted. A wave of curiosity washed over her. She couldn't quite comprehend why the sophisticated machine was unable to register his potential, his inherent abilities. A thought sparked in her mind. Perhaps she should propose an upgrade to the Academy's antiquated equipment. Her gaze then shifted towards Kita, who stood beside Wei, a silent observer amidst the unfolding scene. With a pointed finger and a dismissive wave of his hand, he inquired about Wei's peculiar predicament. What about him? He questioned. Are we truly going to abandon him in this state of limbo? He pressed, his voice tinged with concern. Inayang offered a playful wink, assuring him that Wei was merely taking a momentary respite, and therefore, there was no need to intrude upon his rest. As they departed from the scene, Hao had offered an explanation. He elucidated that the imposed time constraint served as a crucial test of one's observational prowess, their ability to react swiftly and decisively under immense pressure, and their aptitude for critical decision-making. However, He emphasized that the most paramount factor was combat proficiency. Wei's failure, he explained, stemmed directly from a deficiency in this crucial area. Even if he had managed to successfully navigate the examination, he would ultimately succumb to any demonic adversary he encountered in the future. Observing the departure of his companions, Kita, with a palpable sense of awkwardness, inquired, "Are they truly intending to leave him behind?" How he responded with a dismissive gesture. A wave of his hand accompanied by a curt reply. Well, they certainly weren't acting as his caretakers. Failing the exam might actually be a more favorable outcome for him. Kita then pursued them, his voice echoing as he implored them to wait. Sometime later, within the confines of the academy dormitory, Kita approached the threshold of his room, his gaze fixed upon the slip of paper clutched in his hand. A question lingered in his mind. Had he truly triumphed in the entrance examination? Could he have possibly succeeded? He brought his fist to his face, rubbing away the tension. The realization dawned upon him. Against all odds, he had gained entry into the prestigious academy. Haoyan, perched on the bed's edge, exclaimed, "Kita, why are you lingering in the doorway? What's keeping you out there? Come in already." Kita offered a reassuring smile, acknowledging Haoyan's words before stepping inside. Leaning back against the bed, the protagonist announced, "The commencement ceremony is scheduled for next Monday. They mentioned that your sister will be delivering a speech." Seated across from him, Kita affirmed the statement, adding, "She's a distinguished alumna, among the academy's very first graduating class, and undeniably one of the most exceptional." Lost in thought, Haoyan mused, "Li Kirsten, her name remains indelibly etched within my memory." Kada offered a comforting smile, assuring him that his current abilities were far from comparable to hers. He lamented his uselessness, but the protagonist, with a fleeting glance, dismissed his self-deprecating remarks. Raising his hand in a gesture of encouragement, the protagonist declared, "Everyone born into this world possesses a unique talent, a gift waiting to be discovered." He urged Kada to abandon the self-defeating belief that he was inferior to others. Natural aptitude certainly provides an initial advantage, he acknowledged, but unwavering perseverance and dedicated hard work ultimately hold far greater significance. To illustrate his point, he shared an anecdote about someone who initially struggled to even grip a knife properly. Yet, through relentless training, that individual eventually became capable of single-handedly vanquishing entire hordes of monsters. Within the void, Kita's voice echoed, filled with astonishment. "The void? What exactly is this void you speak of?" An awkward smile spread across the protagonist's face as he stammered. Internally, he cursed his slip of the tongue. A dungeon of this magnitude shouldn't even exist yet, he thought. Realizing his error, the words had inadvertently escaped his lips. He sheepishly scratched the back of his head, attempting to recover from the blunder. With a nervous smile, he presented the screen of his phone as a distraction, explaining that he was merely referring to a mobile game. "This is just a high-level villain from the game," he clarified. Kita smiled graciously, expressing her gratitude for the explanation. He explained that he'd lent a hand during the exam and was just checking in to make sure he was all right. The protagonist offered a sheepish grin, scratching his cheek as he replied, "Well, we're in the same group now. And roommates too, so it's only natural to help each other out, right?" He then let out a sigh, thinking to himself, it's a relief he didn't read too much into it. He hopped out of bed, announcing, "Oh, right, I have to head to the airport tonight. Probably won't be back until Monday." He added, "My parents are on vacation overseas, and I'm going to visit them." Kada casually responded, "Sure thing, no problem at all." A few hours later, on the helipad, the exterminator and Fanon watched as a helicopter descended towards them. He glanced at the secretary, stating, "The evaluation results, I still need to handle those personally." She adjusted her glasses, looking at him pointedly and saying, "Come on, let's go." She then boarded the helicopter, while he gave her backside a pat, remarking, "This is an A+ dungeon. You know." She turned around and replied, "The elite 5-star specialists, the cream of the crop, and the highly skilled executors from the guild are preoccupied with their individual assignments, leaving them unavailable. However, he finds himself with an abundance of free time lately, a rare occurrence for someone of his stature." The protagonist vehemently insisted that her sole intention was to accumulate savings. Her words laced with desperation. With a playful smirk, she retorted, "Gotcha. I knew you were thinking that. He saw through her facade, her true intentions transparent to his discerning eyes. The exterminator entered, announcing their imminent departure, signaling the end of their respite. As they settled into their designated seats, preparing for the journey ahead, the secretary fixed her gaze upon him, a silent question hanging in the air. She implored him, her voice filled with longing, to allow her to accompany him into the depths of the dungeon. This time, unlike previous instances, he regarded her with a pensive expression, his intense scrutiny catching her off guard. Flustered, she instinctively brought a hand to her chest, her voice trembling slightly as she inquired, Did you see something interesting? Averting his gaze, he muttered under his breath about the perceived depravity of today's youth, his tone laced with disapproval. In reality, he was calculating their potential survival time within the treacherous confines of the dungeon. Indignation flared within her as she vehemently demanded to know the meaning behind his cryptic utterance, her voice echoing through the sun-drenched city. After a period of tense silence, the fighter positioned himself behind a protective wall, raising his phone to his ear, and uttered a single, pregnant word. What? Where could he be? She wondered aloud, a hint of worry in her voice. He mentioned stepping out for some fresh air. He replied calmly. Ningning erupted in frustration, exclaiming indignantly, but where did he actually go? He informed Kata that he was embarking on a trip with his aunt and uncle. He explained patiently, I just spoke with them. She countered, and this is the first they're hearing of it. Where is he truly? She pressed, her voice filled with urgency. Where has our protagonist vanished to? Pulling the phone away from his ears slightly, as if to gather his thoughts, he stated that he had some pressing matters to attend to, and assured her that he would return in a matter of days. Just then, in a dramatic turn of events, Feigning approached, placing a hand dramatically over her chest, and inquired in a concerned tone, Sir, are you all right? The protagonist's eyes widened in astonishment at the unexpected interruption. Without a word, he abruptly ended the call. Ningning, equally surprised, stared at her phone screen in disbelief and exclaimed, He hung up? Just like that? Then, clenching her fist tightly, a thought consumed her. Whose feminine voice was that on the other end? Overwhelmed by a surge of anger, she ripped her pillow apart with a single strike and roared, That scoundrel! He's done for. Amidst the chaos, the exterminator turned to the secretary and posed a question. His brow furrowed in confusion. She questioned his whereabouts, curious as to why he had gone missing. He silently prayed that Feigning hadn't overheard their conversation, his heart pounding with anxiety. With a hint of exasperation, she reminded him of their scheduled trip to the dungeon, asking if he had already forgotten. A single phone call had diverted her attention, and in that brief moment, he had vanished into thin air. She lamented her inability to leave him unsupervised, even for a mere second. With a sigh, she leaned in close to him, gently pressing her index finger against his forehead. She playfully teased him, suggesting that perhaps he was developing Alzheimer's disease. Averting his gaze, he quickly dismissed her jest, assuring her that such a diagnosis was impossible. Offering a reassuring pat on his cheek, she cautioned him not to fear memory loss, but rather the far more immediate danger of being discovered. As blood trickled from his nose, she crossed her arms and playfully scolded him, labeling him a pervert with a teasing smirk. Turning on her heel, she announced it was time for them to depart. The fighter wiped the blood from beneath his nose, muttering under his breath, cursing his own traitorous nose for betraying him once again. Moments later, they reached the imposing building and stepped inside. A guard snapped to attention, offering a crisp salute to the protagonist. The fighter calmly lit a cigar, the aromatic smoke curling around him, and casually dismissed the need for any formal greetings, suggesting they simply wait outside. The soldier respectfully replied that their duty was to serve the people of Fine, then glanced meaningfully at the protagonist. She, in turn, approached the gate and hesitantly inquired if she should accompany him. He met her gaze and offered a reassuring, "There's no need for you to worry," before disappearing inside. He was accustomed to handling things solo, after all, believing it was often the most efficient and safest approach for everyone involved. Meanwhile, mysterious dungeon gates had begun materializing across the globe, appearing sometime after the Demon King's imprisonment. The true nature of their sudden emergence remained shrouded in mystery. Each portal served as a treacherous threshold between two distinct worlds. Within the depths of these dungeons, lurked hordes of demons and mythical beasts, driven by a singular, destructive goal: to annihilate Earth. The higher the dungeon's designated level, the greater the rewards promised to those who dared to conquer its challenges. The fighter strode confidently into the grand hall, igniting a cigar and bellowing, "Hey, come out and fight." The monster's menacing eyes locked onto him. Accepting the challenge, a ferocious attack suddenly launched towards him. A blur of motion and raw power. From the shadows, the monstrous creature itself materialized, its presence radiating menace. Yen's eyes widened in recognition. The weaver of misfortune, he realized, a chill running down his spine. He had crossed paths with this formidable beast multiple times in his previous life. Each encounter a desperate struggle for survival. His gaze fell upon his scorched cloak. A treasured gift now ruined. That was a gift, he exclaimed in disbelief. Damn mongrel. Yen seethed inwardly, fury building as he processed the monster's blatant disregard for his cherished possession. It had simply torn it to shreds. With a roar of defiance, he launched his counterattack, his movements a whirlwind of controlled aggression. This is it. A grim thought echoed in his mind. He's finished. The monster's power seemed overwhelming. Escape was a futile hope. A mere fantasy against this overwhelming force. To even stand a chance against a mythical beast of this caliber, one would require an awakening of at least 4 stars. A level of power few possessed. But Yen had long surpassed that threshold. His strength far exceeded the minimum requirement. Victory, though challenging, was within his grasp. Defeating this creature wouldn't be an impossible feat. The monster unleashed an ear-splitting roar, a sound that shook the very ground beneath them. Yen gritted his teeth against the deafening noise, his resolve unwavering. Clapping his hands over his ears, he muttered in annoyance, "Quiet, so noisy," he sighed. A fleeting moment of frustration before a new thought took hold. He had a duty to fulfill. He couldn't simply slay the beast. There was a greater purpose at hand. He needed to meticulously document every detail of this encounter for the guild's training manual. A vital resource for future generations of slayers. The weight of responsibility settled upon him. This task, amidst the chaos of battle, was proving to be incredibly challenging. The monstrous creature's hand swiped dangerously close, forcing a nimble dodge. A thought struck him amidst the chaos. Hold on, why did its attack speed suddenly increase so drastically? He wondered aloud. With remarkable composure, he produced a notebook and pen, starting to jot down observations mid-battle. Primary attack pattern, wide sweeping strikes. He dictated to himself, analyzing the monster's movements. Focus on its hands. Dodge is crucial, he added, emphasizing the key to survival. As if to prove his point, he launched himself into the air, narrowly avoiding a devastating blow from a massive paw. He repeated this acrobatic maneuver several times, gracefully evading the monster's relentless onslaught before pausing nearby to continue his analysis. After 3 consecutive failed attacks, he noted, meticulously documenting the creature's behavior, the beast will enter an enraged state, becoming significantly more aggressive. Increased vigilance is paramount during this phase, he reminded himself, understanding the heightened danger. Just then, the monster began channeling fiery energy within its gaping maw. When it does this, the warrior commented, anticipating the impending attack, he deftly sidestepped the fiery blast, continuing his tactical retreat and observation. It leaves itself vulnerable, creating a perfect window for a lethal strike. The weaver isn't particularly intelligent, he realized, identifying a critical weakness. It focuses solely on offense when using its abilities, leaving its rear completely exposed. He had now maneuvered behind the colossal beast, gathering his own energy in preparation for a decisive blow. With a surge of determination, he charged forward, shouting, "This ends now." Unleashing a devastating attack, he aimed for the vulnerable spot. The monstrous entity violently ruptured, splitting into several distinct fragments. With lightning reflexes, the protagonist snatched the creature's head, which was rapidly dissolving into a multitude of tiny, shimmering cubes. After a brief moment, the coveted core materialized in his hand. He suddenly found himself standing in a vast, open expanse. This dungeon is brimming with resources, he mused, taking in the surroundings. The crucial question is, he pondered, how frequently does it replenish itself? If it regenerates quickly, With a short cycle, then it's an absolute goldmine. A national treasure for our country. A mischievous grin spread across his face as he clapped his hands together. Thinking, 50% of all profits. Lucky me. That's what I'll aim for. He chuckled to himself. Suddenly, an axe hurtled towards him, embedding itself deep into the rock behind him with a sickening thud. A raucous horde of orcs surged forward, menacingly approaching Hellion. He lowered his head slightly, a knowing smile playing on his lips as he muttered, "Now this is starting to look like a proper A+ dungeon." Several hulking ogres, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent, advanced towards him. Unfazed, he pulled out a small notebook, a smile still gracing his features, and remarked, "Judging by their sheer numbers, this encounter is clearly designed for teamwork." However, he added with a confident air, "Ogres aren't particularly intimidating. After all," he continued, "the entrance exam included simulations of various creatures, including orcs. A notable characteristic of these demonic creatures is their astonishing lack of intelligence. They are easily agitated and prone to fits of rage. Engaging them in close-quarters combat is strongly discouraged, as it poses significant risks." With a sudden burst of energy, he ascended into the air, launching a devastating attack. He declared his hope that the students had diligently studied the manual he had penned. The ensuing events are rather predictable and require no further elaboration. He relentlessly assaulted the monsters, each strike carrying immense force, and added with a defiant tone that he would intentionally disregard the very principles he had outlined in his own manual. Finding himself encircled by a horde of orcs, he calmly surveyed his surroundings with unwavering confidence. With a dramatic flourish, he extended his arms wide and unleashed a thunderous roar, unleashing a devastating surge of power, obliterating the creatures above him in a spectacular explosion. The protagonist nonchalantly placed a cigarette between his lips, igniting it with a flick of his finger. The battle concluded. He settled onto a nearby stone, casually resting his foot upon the head of a fallen monster. Tapping his finger on the stone, he muttered, 15 seconds to reboot. Every 15 days, a short cycle. Quite efficient. One of the monsters, propped up against his hand, lifted its head and groaned. The sovereign, the formidable demon king, shall undoubtedly rise again. With that final declaration, his form shattered into countless shimmering fragments.